the Pleasant View Heritage Foundation, our goal is to try and share some history, one, that we don't forget it, but two, that we'll appreciate a little bit more where we came from and why we're here. Whether I grew up in North Ogden, and so I kind of inherited the city, but many of you might have DNA that goes back a ways, maybe even to some of the Native Americans we're going to talk about tonight. But tell us about the Trolleys, Travis.
All right. Okay, my name is Travis Humphreys, and I haven't given a public talk or a report since high school, the mid-90s. So you can imagine my surprise when Jerry told me that I volunteered to do this. So we have got to start with the nuts and bolts of the operation, which is right here. And so in 1875, citizens petitioned in Ogden City twice to get a trolley system through town around 24th and 25th Street. The second time it got approved, but they didn't use it. Then in 1883, they incorporated it, got it rolling, and by 1884, the trolleys were moving. William Swain bought Ogden or Hot Springs out here, and he wanted to move people from Ogden to his hot springs. And so he came up with the idea of connecting trolleys to go down Washington Boulevard into the hot springs. And that made Pleasant View one of the first rural cities to have a trolley going through it. And let's see, 1902, it got bought by David Eccles, and they did some upgrading to the lines. They were running steam engines, which were called dummy engines at the time, and we'll go over that. In 1907, they went to electric trolleys. And they also moved the line north to Brigham City, 7 miles. And it said that Brigham City made them stop a mile short of the city because they didn't want a line going directly into the city from the south. I don't know why, but probably something to do with the heathens from south or something like that. I don't know. But the line was in 1909, the line extended to Plain City, and that cost $48,000 to do that. And in 1914, it turned over to the Ogden, Logan, and Idaho Railway. And in 1918, they did another expansion, turned into Utah-Idaho Central Railroad, and then they went further west from Plain City at a cost of $5,000 per mile. So we've got a map here that shows the trolley coming through Washington. Here it comes up Washington across Pleasant View Drive, starts climbing up the hill to Lowman View Drive, and that's a pretty good grade right there. And then up an even steeper grade to Alberta Drive, goes on out Alberta to Pleasant View Drive, and heads on out to the hot springs. Here's a better picture of that, with Pleasant View Drive being right here, Lowman View Drive, and that was a pretty good grade right through there. And it actually got pretty steep through here, and then as soon as they hit Alberta Drive, they were pretty smooth on the way out. Now, here is what we think, and we're pretty sure, is the last remaining chunk of the trolley, the rail bed. You can see it. So here's the old North Ogden City office buildings right here. And you can, if you go there, and you have to be quick because they are breaking ground on a development right there, like soon. But you can see the hump of the rail bed that goes up to the cannery, to Lowman View Drive, and then it somewhere in here, it keeps going north till it hits Alberta Drive and goes on out. Now there was a thing called the cut, which is where it was so steep they had to cut a groove into the hill to get the tracks through, and it caused a lot of problems. And we'll go over that in a minute. But what's fun is they said in the summer the trolley would throw sparks through here, and it would cause wildfires, or not wildfires because they were trolley fires, I guess. It would burn up the grass and the sagebrush. The grass came back the next year, but the sagebrush never did. So this was a problematic spot. So here is a great map we're starting in Ogden right here. We've got actually a trolley line going up Ogden Canyon into Huntsville. It goes up Washington Boulevard, then of course into North Ogden, and through Pleasant View Drive, Alberta Drive, and Pleasant View Drive and on out. So one of the main stops was North Ogden, Pleasant View Drive, and then Hot Springs. This also shows the Plain City line, which was 8.5 miles that they made to go out and pick up canned goods. And I was looking at this map and I was thinking, I wonder where they would cut that through at. And with it being stopped right here, and this is only a guess on my part, but I'm wondering if that's the cannery that George Cook owns now, and that would make sense that they would go straight out there past what is now Fremont High School and pick up the canned goods out there, because the trolley did also double duty as hauling fruit and produce. So here we have a painting of the hot springs, and William Swain has his dummy lines, the dummy engines right here. They're little steam engines. And this was a painting that was done. There's parts that I read that said it was 50 cents for round trip, got you a swimsuit and a towel. So, but the prices of it were all over the place, anywhere from 6 cents up to 50 cents. This is a fun picture. It shows the timetable. They said that it took 1 hour for the trolley to make the 10-mile run one way into town. The timetable with that doesn't really jive with that, so I'm not sure how that works. And then this, of course, says that the round trip is 25 cents. But I thought it was kind of a fun idea, or a fun thought, that clear up until 11:30 p.m. on Pleasant View Drive and Alberta Drive, you had that little trolley running at night. Kind of fun to think about late at night, that little trolley making its way across the town. They said that it moved so slow that the youths could outrun it on foot if they were fast enough, and that they would race it on their horses. So here is a picture of them laying the track bed. Some of the boys that helped with this from North Ogden were Lamoni Holmes, Charles Story, James Deemer, or Jimmy Deemer, Parley Pickford, and some of the boys from Pleasant View are James Fields, Joseph Helm, and Wilford Cragen. And they were, some of them, and now I don't know about all of it, but they were given vouchers to ride the trolley for doing the work that they did, which seems like a lot of work for vouchers. But then I thought, well, that probably meant a lot to be able to get on a trolley and go into Ogden when we didn't have automobiles and it wasn't as easy to do it. When they started building, by 1889 to 1890, they had reached the Cragen property on Pleasant View Drive. And I've been looking at this picture, and I think that that is probably the pass right there. we're at on, if this was on Washington. Now they say that on 2600, since they were running steam engines, that they needed a water tower. And we've got this water tower back here. And so maybe this is on 2600 North on Washington. I'm not sure. They could have moved the water towers around, but there's another picture with this, I'm thinking the same water tower, because I was looking at it, it's got the same features to it. And then the mountain line going down to probably 12th Street, the canyon right there. But these were the old boys working to lay the track to get the trolley out. So the way that the trolley started out was being pulled by mule. And this isn't anything to do with our particular trolley line. It's just a great example of what a mule-driven trolley line would look like. But this is a picture of 25th Street. This is the Broom Hotel, which was built in 1882. It was a pretty fancy hotel. It had crystal chandeliers and everything. Out in front, it had a little trolley pulled by mules with dirt, muddy road. So it's kind of funny to see that. These were the dummy engines. So once the mule system didn't last very long, they went on to steam power. But they wanted to hide the steam engines and make them look like the passenger cars because people didn't quite trust the steam technology. And so you've got the steam engines and the boilers hidden inside these cars. You can see the mech for running the wheels, and then you had the passenger car back here. When they were done using these, because they also moved on from this to electric power, they ran these out to Plain City because they just kept moving things around. This stuff was expensive, and they found another use for it to go out and pull produce back. And it was said that these could pull 1 to 2 cars, and about 15 people could fit in the passenger cars for this. And now we get on to electric. This was probably the first real simple version of an electric trolley. You've got the arm right up there that went and would contact the power line. And you've got the steering mechanism here. The seats on these are facing each other, but when there was no turnaround. So when the trolley would get to the end of the line, the conductor would go grab his mechanism. First, he would disconnect the power, unhook the mechanism. He would walk to the other end, hook it back up, take his little money container with him, and then just go back the way he came. Here we have a lot better trolley, electric trolley. And this is a real fun picture because we see the destination right there, Hot Springs. So this is one of our trolleys. They were improving them a lot. Of course, being enclosed in the winter would be a huge advantage. They were running 2 85 horsepower engines to run this. The way that this accepted the money was it had a little coin box that the passengers would put the money in. The conductor would turn the handle, the money would fall through, it would count the passenger to keep track, and it dropped the money down into a secure location so the conductor couldn't pocket the money. This also had sandboxes in front of the wheels for traction, for stopping, and for going in the winter. And it had the signal cord above the windows that you could pull on it to let the conductor know that you wanted to get off on that stop. Now this picture, this gentleman right here's last name is Balliff, and I understand he was a conductor. And we've got one of his descendants here. What was his first name?
I don't remember it at all, and I'm
Was he a conductor? I think he was. That it was surprising how young the conductors were on this, and that would have been a super cool job for a young kid back then.
I'll have to look him up.
Yeah. So this is 25th Street looking north. We've got Ben Lomond right here. We've got the Broom Hotel right here. Now we've got paved roads. So they're moving up, and there is the trolley track going north to go into North Ogden. Here's our power poles. Here's the lines that cantilever over the track that the trolley would connect to run. Here's a picture of the same location, only a little bit later. There's the Broom Hotel right there. It's obviously snowed, and it's not a muddy mess, so it is paved. We've got 2 tracks now, but the interesting thing about this picture, and I can't figure it out, is we've got the arm coming up from the electric trolley, but there are no power poles, no lines to connect it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how that worked, if we're not seeing something, but I can't figure that out.
I think I have an idea.
Yes.
So Ben Lomond's top is cut off. Maybe they've doctored the picture to make it look good for a postcard.
That's, I honestly thought that because they would clip pictures and do that. And that could be, they thought that the power poles could have been kind of an eyesore for the picture. And so maybe they cropped them out.
Maybe that's the pole and not the arm right above the trolley.
Could be. So our next picture is coming into North Ogden, and that is a beautiful picture. We've got, I'm not sure where about this one would be. Anybody's guess is as good as mine. I thought maybe about 1900 north. But so right over here is our trolley bed, our rail bed, I mean. And there's our power lines hanging over. Here is a little bit further north, but in the winter. And boy, does that show you the challenges that they would have in the winter running a trolley with that pile of snow from the road, but then your trolley's got to run over here. And this has got to be I'm not sure. It would be maybe 1700 north, but that is a fun picture right there.
Travis,
Yes.
I don't know if you were going to talk about this or not, but when education happened back then, the kids prior to Weber High being built in 1927, they went to school at Pleasant View. But when Weber High was built, those kids from Pleasant View had to get to Weber High.
Right.
Built the trolley.
The trolley,
That possible.
right. The trolley was a huge deal and for people who worked in Ogden as well.
And imagine kids nowadays having to go plow the road to get their bus to their house.
Right. We'll go through that. Yeah, I've got a good picture for that. Oh, also, I forgot. Here is the trolley rail right there. That is the original rail that we have a pile of at our shop. And I cut that this morning. So that was the size of rail that the trolley would run on. And you can see from the profile, if you can see the angle, it had some wear to it. They ran them. So here is looking south, 2600 north. And there's our light poles or our power lines. There's our rail bed right there. And this is where it starts to make the turn, goes over the canal and goes over Pleasant View Drive. Now, there's only one building in this picture that I can identify, which is this house right here. I had a friend that rented the top of that, but you can see it's a muddy mess. One of the problems with the trolley in the winter is the rail bed would get soggy and then the trolley would go off the tracks. And you can see how that would be a problem because it is a mess. Oh, and also, the water tower would have been probably somewhere in here to feed the old dummy lines before they went electric. So this is a great picture as well, looking south, and we have right here a little trolley making the curve going up the hill. So moving fruit and produce and sugar beets was a big deal with the trolley. They were doing dual usage on it. And this shows our corner where we're moving to go up to over Pleasant View Drive to go up to Loma View. We got our power lines right here. We got the fruit exchange. I'm not sure what that building was. That sat over the canal. That sat over the canal. And it cooled the fruit. That's awesome. So also, individual families that were selling fruit would also use the trolley. They would pack the boxes in next to the customers or in next to the other riders. So here we've got our stump picture that we all like to see. We've got the stump. We've got cold beer. We've got a car in the background that looks like it's mid-30s. So this might be around the end of the line for the trolley because they stopped running them altogether in 35.
Travis?
Yes.
Neil Ballop says that was his grandpa that built that hot dog stand there.
That is an amazing hot dog stand. I wish it was still here. Really.
Hamburgers for a nickel.
Hamburgers for a nickel.
Right there by the stove.
And the fun thing about this picture is I don't know if it's frozen, but you can see, is that water coming out or is that a frozen? Yeah, if it stayed thawed and since it was running. That is awesome.
Yeah, I drank many times out of that old stuff.
So here we have the cuts, and this was the most problematic part of the whole line. So they had to dig this out of the hill to get the trolley through, but it would drift in with snow a couple of times a year. And through the grapevine news, which in North Ogden was about 4 phones, you would hear the streetcar off the track or the cut is drifted full, and everybody would grab their shovels. And because the kids couldn't get to school, people couldn't get into town. And so they would spend the day digging the cut out, throwing the snow out of that cut. Another problematic part of the trolley was the naughty boys that got into trouble with the trolley because you give them opportunity and they're going to take advantage of it. They would pull the power line, the connecting rod, they would knock that off with a stick to shut power off to the trolley. They would, while they were riding, they would unscrew the light bulbs, throw them out the windows to see if they could hit the power poles as they were going by. They would pull the lever that let loose with the sand and waste the sand. They would pull the signal line to get it to stop, and then nobody got off, which that's a classic. We were doing that in my day. And then they would make rhythmic signals with the cord. They would catch free rides on the outside of it if they could get away with it, and they would grease the rails, and so it would overshoot its stops or it wouldn't be able to get started again. So here's our sugar beets. This is Pleasant View Drive by the canal. This is one of the ways that they were getting the sugar beets onto the rail cars to haul them into town, which was possible with the electric trolleys. We've got a couple of different methods that they used to load the sugar beets up. This one looked like they were dumping. It looks like they had this gantry right here so they could dump the wagon onto it, and then it would convey it up and dump it into the rail car. We have a wagon full of sugar beets right there and horses that look like they've had enough. And then here was another method of dumping the sugar beets into the wagons, which drive the wagon all the way up this trestle. And then again, looks like we had a gantry system here that would dump the wagon down into the rail cars. Utah was the 8th in the nation for canned goods. So this is bigger and better. I don't think these rail cars could have ran on that little track right there. That is some weight and some good-sized wheels. But they said it was not uncommon to see 100 rail cars full of produce, whether it's sugar beets or otherwise, leaving North Ogden going into town. But you can still see we've got the power cantilevered over for the electric trolley. So these pictures I really love. This is the trolley going up Ogden Canyon, and you've got a picture. You can barely see it right here of it going over the bridge, and then this one on probably what's the north side of the river. But they would run people up to the Hermitage and up into Huntsville, and it was a big deal. In fact, I happened to look this morning at this fun book I've got, which is the history of Ogden, Utah, in old postcards. And it's out of print, and I wish it wasn't, because this is a great book that has old postcards from Ogden. But this morning I thought, I wonder if there's any postcards. And sure enough, they had quite a few postcards. And if you want to look at this afterward, you can, of the trolleys going up Ogden Canyon past the Hermitage, up to the old Oaks. And it was a big deal. So this is where some of our trolleys rest now, which is just south of the fairgrounds. With the cost, so the trolley companies would have to pay their fair share for the paving around their tracks, and a lot of them couldn't afford it. And so the cities would just rip out the rails. As far as Pleasant View goes, they started to discontinue the line 1 mile east of the hot springs near the rock crusher at Chamberlain's. And then eventually it went further east to Horace Reese's house. And then again, it receded further to the Craig and Store lane. And then finally the church on Pleasant View Drive. And it was totally discontinued in 1925. Now, I think that's as far as Pleasant View is concerned, because they got rid of the whole trolley system in Ogden trolleys and everything in 35. And that is a picture that is near and dear to somebody's heart in this audience. Holly, do you know those people? You can't remember their names, but that is a great picture of two ladies on the trolley track.